It was a crisp autumn evening in New York City, the kind where the golden light of the setting sun dances against the towering skyscrapers. Barron Trump, the 18-year-old son of President Donald Trump, had just left a charity event at a grand hotel near Central Park. His security detail followed at a distance, giving him some space but ensuring his safety. Barron wasn't like his father in many ways. While the world expected him to bask in wealth and power, he had developed a habit of quietly observing the struggles of ordinary people. He often read about poverty, homelessness, and social disparities, wondering what could be done. But he never imagined that a simple walk home that night would change his perspective forever. As Barron strolled through a less crowded street, a man sitting on the sidewalk caught his attention. He was wrapped in a tattered coat, his face lined with years of hardship. His shoes barely hid soles, and his eyes, though tired, held a surprising glimmer of warmth. The man sat beside a makeshift sign that read, "I once had everything. Now I have only my faith." Curious, Barron stopped and looked at him. He wasn't sure why, but something about the man felt different from the others he had seen on the streets. The homeless man noticed Barron's hesitation and smiled. "You look like someone who has everything," he said, his voice hoarse but kind. Barron hesitated, then nodded. "I've been fortunate," he admitted. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $1 bill. With a shaky hand, he extended it to Barron. "Here," he said. "This is for you." Barron was stunned. "Why are you giving me money? Shouldn't it be the other way around?" The man chuckled. "Son, this isn't just money. It's a test. What you do with this dollar will tell me more about you than anything else." Intrigued, Barron carefully took the bill. He wanted to refuse, but something inside him told him that this moment meant more than just charity. "I'll make it count," he promised. The man nodded, his eyes twinkling. "Then let's see if the world notices." As Barron walked away, he clutched the dollar in his hand, feeling the weight of an unexpected responsibility. He had no idea that this simple act of generosity, this $1 challenge, would lead to something that would inspire the entire world. Barron Trump walked back to Trump Tower, his mind racing. He had held money in his hands countless times before, but never had a single dollar bill felt so significant. He turned it over, noticing how crumpled and worn it was, just like the hands that had given it to him. He could have easily stuffed it into his pocket and forgotten about it, but the man's words lingered in his mind. "This isn't just money. It's a test." Sitting in his room later that night, Barron opened his laptop and stared at the dollar, tapping his fingers against the desk. What could he possibly do with just $1 that would truly matter? Then an idea struck him. He opened his social media account and typed out a post. "Tonight, a homeless man gave me $1 and told me to make it count. I'm starting a challenge. How far can we make this $1 go to help people in need? I'll match every dollar donated and let's see what we can create together. Hashtag the $1 challenge." After a moment's hesitation, he clicked post. Within minutes, his followers began reacting. Comments poured in, some skeptical, some intrigued, and others genuinely moved by the story. People started sharing the post, and soon it spread like wildfire. By morning, the hashtag the $1 challenge was trending across the country. Thousands of people wanted to know how Barron planned to use the dollar. Messages from influencers, celebrities, and even major charitable organizations flooded his inbox. Some called it a publicity stunt, while others saw it as an opportunity to create real change. Barron, however, wasn't interested in just raising money. He wanted to prove a point that even the smallest act of kindness, no matter how insignificant it seemed, could multiply into something extraordinary. With his father in the White House, he had access to resources most people could only dream of, but this wasn't about political influence or family wealth. It was about proving that a single moment of generosity could set off a ripple effect. Determined, Barron reached out to a local homeless shelter and arranged to visit that afternoon. He wanted to start where it mattered most, on the streets, with the people who knew struggle firsthand. As he stepped out of Trump Tower, a crowd of reporters and onlookers had already gathered outside. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust in his direction. "Barron, is this your way of entering politics?" one journalist asked. "Is your father involved in this initiative?" another inquired. Barron paused, holding up the crumpled dollar bill. "This isn't about politics," he said firmly. "This is about a homeless man who had nothing but still chose to give. And I intend to honor the generosity." With that, he walked past the flashing cameras and into the waiting car, the dollar still in his hand, knowing that this was only the beginning. Barron Trump arrived at Hope Haven Shelter, a modest facility in downtown Manhattan that provided meals and temporary housing for the homeless. The director, a middle-aged woman named Linda Carter, greeted him with a warm but skeptical expression. "I have to admit," Linda said, shaking Barron's hand, "when I saw your name on the call log, I wasn't sure if this was real or just another publicity stunt." Barron smiled, pulling the crumpled $1 bill from his pocket. "I don't blame you," he said, "but I promise you this isn't about me. It's about what this dollar represents." He explained how the homeless man had given him the dollar and how he had turned that moment into the #1 challenge. Linda listened intently, her skepticism fading. "You want to see if $1 can make a real difference?" she asked. "Exactly," Barron nodded. "I want to start with something small, maybe funding one meal, one blanket, or one bed. And then I want to show people how quickly one act of kindness can grow." Linda led him inside, where dozens of people sat at long tables eating meals. Some looked up curiously, while others kept their heads down, lost in their own struggles. Barron pulled out his phone and went live on social media. "I'm here at Hope Haven, where $1 can provide a warm meal for someone in need. I'm using my dollar to fund the first meal, and for every person who donates $1, we'll provide another meal. Let's see how far we can take this." Within minutes, the donations started rolling in. $1, $5, $10. Then, a message popped up. "Elon Musk has donated $10,000. Barron's eyes widened. He showed the notification to Linda, who gasped. That's enough to feed this shelter for weeks," she said. Then came another donation, $5,000 from Oprah Winfrey. A flood of celebrities, athletes, and ordinary people joined in. By the end of the night, the #1 challenge had raised over $250,000. Barron sat down at one of the tables, stunned. The homeless man had given him $1. In just 24 hours, that $1 had multiplied into $250,000. But he wasn't done yet. The next morning, major news outlets covered the story. Talk shows debated whether it was a genius idea or just another rich kid's moment of fame. But regardless of the opinions, one thing was clear: the movement had begun. Then came the biggest shock of all. Barron received a direct message on social media. It was from the homeless man who had given him the $1. "I saw what you did," the message read. "Meet me at the same spot where we met. I have something to tell you." Barron felt a chill run down his spine. Who was this man? And why did he feel like this was just the beginning? Barron Trump hurried through the crowded streets of Manhattan, his security detail struggling to keep up. He wasn't sure why, but his heart pounded in his chest as he approached the spot where he had first met the homeless man. The man was there, sitting on the same sidewalk, wrapped in the same tattered coat. But this time, he wasn't just another face in the crowd. He was the reason the world had been inspired. Barron slowed his pace and knelt beside him. "I saw your message," he said. "I came as fast as I could." The man smiled, his tired eyes filled with something that Barron couldn't quite place: pride, maybe, or something even deeper. "You did good, kid," the man said. "You took the $1 and turned it into something bigger than yourself." Barron pulled the crumpled $1 from his pocket. "I never spent it," he admitted. "I didn't need to. The idea was bigger than the money." The man chuckled. "That's the secret, isn't it?" He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It was never about the $1. It was about what you would do when given the smallest opportunity to change something." Barron frowned. "Who are you?" The man sighed, looking up at the sky as if gathering his thoughts. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke. "My name is Jonathan Turner," he said. "And I wasn't always homeless." Barron sat back, listening intently as Jonathan continued. "I used to be a Wall Street investor," Jonathan said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I had millions. A beautiful house. A family. Everything a man could ask for." Barron blinked in surprise. "What happened?" Jonathan exhaled. "I made a mistake. A big one. I trusted the wrong people, invested in the wrong deals. One bad decision after another, and I lost everything. My house, my savings, my family." Barron swallowed hard. He had read about stories like this, how fortunes could disappear overnight. But seeing the man in front of him, living proof of how quickly life could turn, was different. "I tried to rebuild," Jonathan continued. "But when you hit rock bottom, people stop believing in you. Doors close. Friends disappear. You become invisible." He gestured around him. "This is where I ended up." Barron felt a lump form in his throat. "But you still gave me that $1. Jonathan nodded. Because I wanted to see if someone like you, someone born into wealth, understood what it meant to have nothing. I wanted to see if you would take that dollar and ignore it or if you would make it mean something. Barron's grip tightened around the crumpled bill. You changed lives, Barron, Jonathan said. Not because you had money, but because you chose to do something with it. Barron looked at him, realization dawning on him. This man had lost everything, yet he had given the only dollar he had left just to see what someone else would do with it. And in return, Barron had helped raise millions. Barron reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I want to tell your story, he said. I want people to know who you are. Jonathan smiled, shaking his head. It's not about me anymore, kid. This was always about something bigger. He patted Barron's shoulder. But if you really want to do something, then promise me one thing. Barron leaned in. Anything. Keep going, Jonathan said. Don't let this be just another viral trend. Make real change. Barron felt a wave of determination surge through him. I promise. Jonathan grinned. Then you've already won. Barron stood up, looking down at the man who had changed his entire perspective on life. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was a teacher, a lesson, a reminder that true wealth wasn't in money, but in what you chose to do with it. As Barron walked away, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Barron Trump returned home that night with a renewed sense of purpose. The weight of Jonathan Turner's story pressed heavily on his mind. Here was a man who had once lived a life of privilege and power, only to lose everything. Yet, even in his lowest moment, he had chosen to give rather than take. That $1 bill, now soft and frayed, had been more than a simple act of charity. It had been a lesson. And Barron wasn't going to let it be forgotten. A bold new vision. The next morning, Barron called a meeting with a team of social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and financial experts. He outlined his vision, the $1 Foundation. Its mission was simple: to turn small acts of giving into large-scale change. The idea wasn't about massive donations from billionaires. It was about ordinary people coming together, proving that even the smallest contributions could create a ripple effect. For every $1 donated, the foundation would invest in programs that provided food, shelter, job training, and financial education for homeless individuals. But more than that, Barron wanted to give people like Jonathan a second chance. No one should be invisible, he told his team. We need to help people rebuild their lives, not just survive. He made a personal pledge. He would match every dollar donated for the first year, using his own money to ensure that no contribution went unnoticed. A nation inspired. The announcement of the $1 Foundation sent shockwaves across the nation. It was covered on every major news network, from CNN to Fox News. Some called it the most unexpected philanthropic movement of the decade. Others saw it as a game changer for how society approached poverty. The support was unprecedented. Moneybag Jeff Bezos donated $5 million. Moneybag Mark Cuban pledged $2 million. Moneybag LeBron James, Taylor Swift, and countless others joined in. But the most remarkable donations? They came from ordinary Americans. A 10-year-old girl in Ohio sent in $1 from her piggy bank. A retired veteran in Texas mailed in his last $5. A struggling waitress in California donated her tip money. The movement had transcended wealth and status. It became about humanity. Jonathan's redemption. A few months later, Barron met with Jonathan again, but this time under very different circumstances. Jonathan had been offered a job as a financial literacy mentor through the Foundation's program. His knowledge of investing and his story of resilience had inspired others. He was no longer sleeping on the streets. He had hope again. I don't know how to thank you, Jonathan said, shaking Barron's hand. You already did, Barron replied, pressing the old, crumpled dollar bill back into Jonathan's hand. Jonathan's eyes widened. But you started this, Barron said with a smile. And now it's yours again. Tears welled up in Jonathan's eyes as he clutched the bill. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was proof that a single act of kindness could change the world. Epilogue: the dollar that never stopped giving. 1 year later, the $1 Foundation had helped over 500,000 homeless individuals across the country. It had provided House temporary housing for thousands. Fork and knife a plate over 2 million meals. Graduation cap job training and financial education programs. And it all started with one homeless man, $1, and one young man willing to make a difference. The original crumpled dollar? It was framed inside the foundation's headquarters. Beneath it, an inscription read, "It's not about how much you have, it's about what you do with it." And the world never forgot.